No one remembers the last night the original pantry's counter held every kind of Angelino at once, or the moment the lights at Brite Spot stopped inviting chance gatherings in Echo Park. Most did not even notice when Canter's lost its friction, because nothing exploded, and daily life unraveled anyway. In Los Angeles, what vanished was not just diners or errand spots. It was the invisible ground that held the city together. Why do the places you hardly think about leave the deepest mark when they are gone? The answer begins with a story you probably lived through without ever realizing it. The sound of plates sliding across a counter, the scrape of a stool, the low hum of voices. These are the details that linger for anyone who spent time at the original Pantry Café. Downtown at 9th and Figueroa, the pantry opened its doors in 1924, and for generations it was the place you drifted into without thinking. Early shift workers, city officials, musicians finishing a set, families in for breakfast after church, all found themselves elbow to elbow. No reservation, no dress code, no questions asked. The pantry claimed it never closed and never lacked a customer, a streak that ran unbroken for nearly a century. When the 110 freeway came through in 1950, the pantry moved just around the corner, carrying its regulars and their habits with it. Inside, the counter stretched long and open, always lined with people from every part of the city. Cash only, coffee poured without pause, autographed photos on the wall. The lines outside at 3 in the morning were as much about seeing who else was awake as they were about pancakes or steak. In 1981, ownership changed hands to Richard Riordan, a city councilman who later became mayor, but the spirit of the place did not shift overnight. For longtime patrons, the pantry was not about the menu. It was about the certainty that, whatever hour you arrived, the city's different worlds would briefly overlap. There was no need to plan or explain. Everyone was just part of the same current, passing through. Years later, the question hangs in the air. What happens to a city when its default meeting ground goes quiet? The answer is not found in a single closure or a headline. It is in the quiet absence left behind, the missing friction of strangers sharing a counter, and the routines that once held daily life together without anyone noticing until they were gone. Brite Spot sat on the corner of Sunset and Effie, the kind of place you did not plan to visit but always ended up in. For years, Echo Park's creative crowd drifted through its doors, musicians lugging gear after a show, writers hunched over coffee and checkered tables, neighbors who just needed somewhere to go when the night felt unfinished, sketchbooks and laptops mixed with late plates of fries. You could walk in alone and leave with a new friend, or just the sense that you had been part of something bigger than your own story. It was a shared, unplanned living room for a certain era of Los Angeles. In late 2014, a handwritten sign appeared, closed for renovations. The regulars waited, at first patient, then restless as weeks stretched into months and the light stayed off. Social media filled with stories of people circling the block, hoping for a glimpse of the old neon. By the time Brite Spot reopened, the room felt different. New menu, new faces, the old rhythm gone. The default had vanished. What replaced it was curated, intentional. The neighborhood gained a new restaurant, but lost the living room where plans were made by accident. Canter's, on Fairfax, still glows at night. The deli started in Boyle Heights in the early 1930s and followed its customers west, landing in its current theater-sized space by the mid-1950s. For decades, Canter's was a guarantee. If you did not know where to go at 3 a.m., you went there. Musicians, night shift workers, families, and insomniacs all shared the same fluorescent light. The kibitz room pulsed with live music and unplanned encounters. But in recent years, the guarantee has faded. Hours tightened, especially after the pandemic. The crowd thinned and shifted. There were more tourists, more destination diners, and fewer locals who just happened to be awake. The deli is still there, the booths and counters unchanged, but its role has narrowed. It is a place you decide to visit, not a place you simply find yourself. When these defaults disappear or change, the loss is not always visible. No demolition, no headline, just the slow erosion of places where the city's stories once collided by chance. On Sepulveda Boulevard, just south of Centinela, a neon chicken once glowed above the traffic, beckoning drivers from the 405, families on their way to LAX, and anyone drifting through Westchester's endless surface streets. Dinah's Chicken, founded in 1959, wasn't just another stop along the road. It was a waypoint, a place that fit into the city's rhythm of movement. You didn't have to plan a visit. The sign did the work, catching your eye as you slowed for a red light or searched for dinner after a long drive. Inside, the booths filled with people who had nothing in common except the fact that they had all ended up here together by chance. For one family, Sunday meant piling into the car, no matter how many kids or grandparents squeezed in, and heading to Dinah's without calling ahead or checking the clock. The ritual was simple. Order a bucket, watch the waitresses in their crisp uniforms, and see who else might walk through the door. Sometimes it was a neighbor, sometimes a stranger from another part of town just passing through. The place felt like it belonged to everyone and no one. It was a stopover that turned into a memory, not because of any special event, but because it was always there when you needed it. Dinah's was built for the age of the automobile. Its googie architecture, a swooping roof, big windows, and that towering neon sign was designed to catch your attention at 40 miles per hour. In the 1960s and 70s, roadside restaurants like this lined Los Angeles's major boulevards, each one promising a quick meal and a moment out of the car. The city's surface streets weren't just routes from point A to point B. They were corridors of possibility, where a family could stumble into a shared meal, a traveler could find a bit of comfort, and teenagers could linger after a game or a movie. As decades passed, the traffic thickened and the city changed around Dinah's. New developments crept closer, and rumors of redevelopment flickered every few years. The land beneath the restaurant grew more valuable than the chicken inside. Some parcels next door were bulldozed for new buildings, and each time regulars wondered if this would be the last year for the neon bird. But for now, the sign still glows, though fewer people pull in without thinking, and more drivers pass by on their way somewhere else, guided by apps and schedules instead of instinct. What disappears when a place like Dinah's fades isn't just a meal or a building. It's the possibility of unplanned connection. The city becomes a little more efficient, a little less surprising. For the families who made Dinah's part of their weekly orbit, and for the strangers who found themselves at a table together by accident, it was a reminder that Los Angeles once made room for chance encounters, lit by neon, anchored by a bucket of chicken, and open to anyone who happened to stop. A neighborhood market once meant more than a place to shop. At Hughes, the cashier might remember your name, your kids' birthdays, or the brand of bread you always bought. Founded in the 1950s, Hughes Markets grew alongside the city, adapting to the pace of Los Angeles life. The aisles were familiar, the faces behind the counter changed slowly, and customers lingered to chat about Little League scores or neighborhood news. By the late 1990s, that routine started to unravel. In 1997, Hughes was acquired by Fred Meyer, and before the year was out, the stores were absorbed into the national Kroger chain. New signs went up, old uniforms disappeared, and the local quirks that made each store feel personal faded into a corporate template. Regulars noticed when their favorite cashier was reassigned or let go. Product displays shifted, and the odd brands that served particular neighborhoods vanished in favor of national bestsellers. For many, the loss was not just about groceries. It was the end of small rituals that threaded the week together. The story repeated itself across the city. Thrifty Drug Stores, a fixture since 1929, became part of Rite Aid in 1996. For decades, Thrifty's ice cream counter was a rite of passage. The clatter of metal scoops, the cold weight of a cylinder-shaped cone, the steady hand of a clerk who had served 3 generations. Kids learned to count change here, parents made deals after school, and the price of a scoop, 15 cents, then 35 cents, then more, became a marker of time. After the merger, the ice cream brand survived, but the counter itself began to disappear. Some stores kept the freezer, but the ritual was never quite the same. The script of daily life, bike rides for a cone and waiting in line with neighbors, was quietly rewritten. On the street, newsstands once anchored corners from MacArthur Park to Westwood. The operators, often working long hours, became silent guides to the city's rhythms. Night shift workers grabbed a paper at 4 in the morning. Insomniacs picked up a magazine. Immigrants scanned foreign headlines for news from home. These stands were more than retail. They were unofficial help desks, places to hear about a job, a room for rent, or the latest city gossip. By the late 1990s and the early 2000s, the print world shrank. Cell phones and the internet replaced the need to stop, to browse, to talk. Newsstands closed or shifted to selling snacks and lottery tickets, and the faces behind the counter vanished as quietly as they had arrived. The city lost another layer of weak ties, those brief recurring contacts that once made neighborhoods feel less anonymous. What connected these places was not nostalgia for a brand or a building. It was the repetition of small shared acts, a wave from the cashier, a scoop of ice cream after school, a nod from the newsstand operator who knew your schedule better than your boss. When corporate mergers, digital convenience, and rising rents erased these routines, something subtle but essential slipped away. Los Angeles became a city where errands were optimized, not experienced. It became a place where the background hum of daily connection grew quieter, one counter and one corner at a time. On a Friday night in the mid-1980s, Westwood Village felt like the city's living room. Theaters glowed with new releases and lines curled around the block, sometimes doubling back on themselves. UCLA students mixed with high schoolers from the Valley, families out for a late dinner, and teenagers just looking for something to do. The plan was not to see a specific movie or eat at a particular place. The plan was just to be there. People drifted between record stores, arcades, fast food counters, and wide, busy sidewalks. The entire village buzzed with possibility. No one needed a reason to show up, and everyone seemed to belong. For one UCLA cinephile, those nights meant slipping out of a midnight screening, still arguing about the ending, and finding yourself in a sea of strangers who all felt like part of the same story. She remembers that you'd spill onto the street, and it was just bodies everywhere. You'd run into friends you hadn't seen in months, or just stand around talking about movies with people you'd never met. It was automatic. You never had to plan it. That sense of shared ground did not last. On January 30th, 1988, a gunshot on a crowded sidewalk changed the village overnight. A young woman named Karen Toshima was killed in the crossfire of a gang dispute, a tragedy that sent shockwaves through the city. The response was immediate. Police flooded the area, anti-cruising laws were enforced, and the atmosphere shifted from welcoming to wary. The weekend crowds thinned. Business owners watched as foot traffic dropped from tens of thousands to a fraction of what it had been. Theaters cut back on midnight shows. Restaurants closed earlier. Slowly, the village stopped being a place you just ended up. It became a place you visited with a purpose, if at all. The buildings remained. The neon signs still flickered on at dusk. But the ritual of wandering, of letting the night unfold among strangers, faded. UCLA students started driving to Santa Monica or Pasadena instead. The village lost its role as a cultural commons, not because it was demolished, but because the habits and crowds that once defined it quietly disappeared. What was lost was not just a district or a scene, it was a pattern of life. the kind that only exists when people gather for no reason except to be together. Sociologist Ray Oldenburg described third places as the everyday rooms outside home and work, cafes, diners, markets, newsstands, where city life quietly overlapped and boundaries faded. In Los Angeles, these spots were not just conveniences. They were the city's connective tissue, holding together routines, weak ties, and a sense of belonging that did not require an invitation. Their disappearance was not just nostalgia or chance. Four forces, each distinct, shaped this loss. First, real estate economics reshaped the city. As commercial rents soared along boulevards and in older neighborhoods, small businesses, diners, corner markets, and newsstands were priced out. Landlords chasing higher returns replaced them with chains or waited for redevelopment. Even when buildings stayed, the cost of staying open late or serving a neighborhood crowd became impossible. In Westwood Village, rising land values and speculation pushed out the mix of theaters, arcades, and all-night eateries that once drew crowds for no reason but to be together. Redevelopment changed who could afford to be there. Second, corporate consolidation swept through retail. Regional chains like Hughes Markets were absorbed by national brands, their quirks and familiar faces replaced by standardized layouts and product lines. Thrifty Drug Stores, once a fixture for after-school ice cream and small rituals, became another Rite Aid, its counter service quietly disappearing even as ice cream remained in the freezer. These changes did more than alter what was on the shelves. They standardized the experience, making it harder for a place to serve as a neighborhood anchor or a default stop. Third, policing and regulation narrowed who could linger and for how long. Business improvement districts, anti-loitering ordinances, and increased security made corners and counters less welcoming for anyone not there to spend money or move along. Late-night hours drew scrutiny, and informal gathering became suspect. In some districts, the unplanned friction of strangers sharing space was managed away in favor of order and predictability. The result was fewer places where a night shift worker, a student, and a retiree might cross paths without purpose. Finally, technology and changing habits finished the job. Smartphones replaced newsstands as information hubs. Streaming and multiplex theaters made moviegoing a private or scattered event, rather than a reason to converge in Westwood. Apps and delivery services turned errands into transactions, dissolving the small rituals that once anchored daily routines. The need to wander, to stumble into a place by chance, faded as options multiplied and schedules tightened. Urbanist Eric Kleinenberg calls this the loss of social infrastructure, the physical spaces that quietly sustain community. What disappeared was not just a list of addresses, it was the default settings of city life, the places where people mixed, routines overlapped, and the boundaries of belonging felt porous. When those defaults vanished, the city became a place where every connection had to be arranged, and the simple act of showing up lost its power to make you part of something larger. Today, most Angelenos navigate a city designed for efficiency, not chance connection. As national chains replace local anchors, what disappears isn't just nostalgia, it's the daily unplanned contact that once made neighborhoods feel alive. How Los Angeles rebuilds its social fabric now will decide if the city remains a collection of addresses or becomes a place people truly belong. Share your memories or hopes for Los Angeles below.